This is Nikki G and welcome to Better Commander. Today we're going to talk the most iconic, powerful, and ancient tribe. As you look to the darkened sky, there be dragons. Bro, look at you. You think you can command the power of the primeval dragons? The elder dragons? The dragons? Well, get ready for a digression into madness. When Sheldon Menery fell to Earth in a meteor from outer space, he surveilled the landscape. With eyes like glowing coals, he looked around and decided there was one thing missing from the planet, and it was a fun magic format. At first, now stay with me here on this history lesson, Commander was conceptualized as Elder Dragon Highlander. Elder Dragon because those were the cool legendary creatures back then, and Highlander because there can be only one of each card in your decks. You see, for the young folks, Highlander was a series of movies in which Christopher Lambert was compelled for some reason to cut off the heads of other dudes that were immortal like him. Looking back on it, that was really a weird thing to do, but that's what we did in the olden days. Anyways, as you can see, dragons have been an integral part of this whole thing since the inception of the format. So let's talk about some key cards for your dragon decks, enablers, and commanders you can build your dragon deck around. There are 313 legal dragons in Commander right now. But first, use your forelimbs and opposable thumbs to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Depending on what plane you're on, the dragons don't have opposable thumbs, so be thankful for that. And I want to be thankful for the kind supporters like Christopher Knorr. I don't do Patreon, I don't have any sponsors, so my only support comes from kind, generous people who will throw me a thanks using the buttons below the video. Thanks, brother. Listen, I just got done saying there are 300 dragons. I'm not going to cover every single dragon in the format, but listen, Balefire Dragon is really good. Goldspan Dragon is really good. The ancient dragons from Baldur's Gate are good, but that's not how you build on a budget. You know, if you have some of those cards, throw them in, dude, but I'm going to cover some cards that we can use to flesh out our dragon decks. I think every Commander player, whether you're new or an old hat like me, should endeavor to build a dragon deck. Some are better than others, and some are cheaper to build than others. Before we delve too deep, I want to shout out the Commander starter deck, Draconic Destruction. If you're a beginner, this is a legitimately decent starting point for a newer player. It's got some great utility cards and reprints, and one of them, and this card is absolutely essential for a dragon deck, is Dragon Tempest. So this is 1 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, it gains haste until end of turn. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of dragons you control. The goal of any dragon deck is to flood the board with dragons and attack with them. This card is a non-combat win condition for when your opponent is flickering a Stone Hoard dignitary or has some other way to muck up your combat step. Now if you put out 5/5/5 dragons, right, they all see each other. And if all you have is an empty board besides that, you're now throwing around 25 damage, and they all have haste. So that's a total of 50 damage to deal with. This card has won every game that I've gotten it to stick and is a fantastic card for 2 mana. And that leads us very nicely into our enablers and key cards. You'll notice as we go along, many of these cards are red or contain red. As you build your dragon deck, you'll look around and bemoan the fact that they have very high mana value. Your early turns will see you casting quite a bit of ramp. My dragon decks usually have about 15 or 16 sources of ramp. So you got your Dragon Lord Servant. Look at this guy. He's got a hoof. He's got some horse head. He's going to feed a dragon. 1 and a red for a Goblin Shaman. It's a 1/3. Dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This guy's simple, he's effective. These cost reducers are better than just a mana dork when you're casting multiple dragons per turn and can help power out bigger dragons. This guy just marinates himself so he doesn't get eaten, which I can appreciate. I do the same thing. Look at this muscle man, Dragon Speaker Shaman. It's 1 red for a creature, Human Barbarian Shaman. It's a 2/2. Dragon spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. We speak the dragon's language of flame and rage. They speak our language of fury and honor. Together we shall weave a tale of destruction without equal. This fella makes your dragons even cheaper. I have one of these, but as with the aforementioned Dragon Lord Servant, remember that these don't help with colored pips if you're running a 5-color commander. Let's power out some of your bigger spells with Ganax Astral Hunter. 4 and a red for a legendary creature dragon. It's a 3/4 with flying. Whenever Ganax Astral Hunter or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a treasure token, buddy. Yeah, you're trying to make 1,000,000 dragons. Use the treasure to cast more dragons. And what are you going to do with all that treasure? You're going to make a dragon's hoard, dude. Pile it up. 3 generic mana for an artifact. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, put a gold counter on Dragon's Hoard. Tap, remove a gold counter from Dragon's Hoard, draw a card. That's pretty nice. We want to draw cards. It also is just a generic 3 mana rock you can tap to add 1 mana of any color. If you watch certain channels, you think that 3 mana rocks did some terrible crime against humanity or something. I think this card rocks and you can get some extra cards. Come on, dude. It's fine. And you got the Firemind Vessel, dude. What else are you going to put your Firemind in? I got one of these in my China cabinet. 4 generic mana for an artifact. Firemind Vessel enters the battlefield tapped, but you can tap to add 2 mana of different colors. Well, this card kind of sucks, you know, because it comes in tapped, but it's really good fixing that can't be found anywhere else. And it's generic. It goes in all your dragon decks. I think there's some better cards out there, but I use this for my 5-color dragons. You know, it's not a Nicky G video without a plug for the old broccoli head. Elysian Caryatid, 1 and a green for a creature plant. It's a 1/1. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which you're gonna, dude, it's dragons, add 2 mana of any 1 color instead. I've plugged this guy before, but if you're building a 5-color mana base, you need a solid green base, and this guy will be tapping for 2 mana if you're running a dragon commander. Come on. Alright, I'm not 100% sold on this card, but fresh out of Dominaria United, you got Revaz of the Claw. 1 black and a red for a legendary creature is a Viashino Warlock. It's a 3/3 with Menace. Tap, add 2 mana and any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon creature spells. You got some restricted mana there, dude. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard. When you cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard, it gains when this creature dies, exile it. Okay, so this is a dragon mana dork and a dragon recursion engine, but for some reason he's not a dragon, which bothers me. Interesting option if this is in your colors. I'm removing a 3 mana dork and Scion of the Ur Dragon to try this guy out. Okay, so we covered some ramp options, brother, but we also want to be drawing cards like crazy. In a dragon deck, we want to be casting things on turns 2 through 4, and it probably isn't going to be dragons. So we have these little 3 and 4 mana enchantments, and this is probably the best one. Got Temur Ascendancy, green, blue, and a red for an enchantment. Creatures you control have haste. That's great. We want our dragons to have haste. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. You definitely want haste, and the dragons are mostly going to be pretty beefy. Those Temur folks, though, take a look at that art. They ascend by riding yaks to the top of the mountain, dude. This card is only like $1.50. Garruk's Uprising, 2 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card, so it's pretty good late game. Creatures you control have trample. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. There's the Liver King, dude, summoning all of his dinosaurs, which are just about as real as his nutrition regimen that he was selling everybody, am I right? And you got Elemental Bond, 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. I recently heard a channel that rhymes with bit-picking birds. Kinda crap on this card. And next to the 2 previously mentioned enchantments, it is kinda poo. But we have 100 cards, dude, and this one's pretty cheap. Then you got Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner, sexiest sea creature on the planet. 2 and a hybrid green-blue for a legendary planeswalker, Kiora. Starts with loyalty 7. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. There you go, right there, buddy. It also has -1 untapped target permanent. I hear people sometimes say, "Oh, it's got 7 loyalty, blah, blah. It's going to get attacked." It's like, yeah, maybe. I mean, somebody could attack this thing, but if they don't, and why would they? I mean, it's going to stick around for a while. I'm surprised I don't see this card more. And when you're making lots of dragons, you're drawing lots of cards. At base level, this is also ramp, dude, or you can give one of your dragons a little pseudo-vigilance, brother. And you got Corlessa, Scale Singer, green and a blue for a legendary creature, Dragon Bard. It's a 1/4. You can look at the top card of your library at any time. What do you think about that? You can cast the dragon spells from the top of your library. This goes great in a deck with a high density of dragons. Look at this cool cat playing the accordion like a dang dance machine, dude. Alright, I'm going to call this guy Imrith, Desert Doom, 3 blue for a legendary creature dragon. It's a 5/5 with flying. Imrith, Desert Doom has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. This is not super fantastic win the game, but it's aggressively costed. 5/5 for 5 with that upside. This thing is only about 69 cents, dude. Runehorn Hellkite. Who scribed those runes on this guy's horns? It's 5 and a red for a creature dragon. It's a 5/5 with flying. Pretty standard dragon. 5 and a red, exile Runehorn Hellkite from your graveyard. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. This guy's a wheel, and it's a dragon. This is great card advantage, and if you're a Scion of the Ur Dragon deck and you need cards, you can just tutor this guy right to the graveyard, activate his ability, and draw a fresh grip, brother. Melania told me these were mice guys. Skyline Despot, 5 red creature dragon. It's a 5/5 Donald Trump with flying. When Skyline Despot enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, buddy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you're the Monarch, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. Monarch is a lot of fun, right? Unless you're Meghan Markle. She didn't want to play with Monarch and even took one of the Monarchs over to California. It's more fun at that point just to be a loser. This guy is a $1.25, seems like a steal right now. In the old days of Commander, I was a real sucker for this card. Dragon Mage, 5 red for a creature, Dragon Wizard, it's a 5/5 with flying. Whenever Dragon Mage deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. If you have haste, this guy can come out of nowhere, screw up everyone's carefully crafted hands, and refill yours. I love this guy. He's just hanging out on some rocks. He's making some magical plans, dude. Alright, then you have some utility dragons, some win conditions. You got Lozhan Dragon's Legacy. This guy has no wings, but has flying. It's a 3 blue and a red for a legendary creature, Dragon Shaman, 4/2 with flying. Whenever you cast an adventure or dragon spell, I'm not going to ignore that adventure part because it doesn't make any sense. Lozhan Dragon's Legacy deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target that isn't a commander. She channels myth, she channels memory into waves of deadly arcane force, okay? She's one of my ex-girlfriends, and that's what she got in the divorce. Why can't you hit commanders? Oh well, I guess I'll just hit you in the face instead. Oh my god, I love this guy. Thrakas the Butcher. 3 red and a green for a legendary creature. He's a dragon peasant, dude. He has no money. He's a peasant just like us. He's a 3/4 with trample. Whenever Thrakas the Butcher attacks, double the power of each dragon you control until end of turn. Somehow, he never seems to run out of meat, dude. This has been said about me by at least one of my ex-girlfriends, and this is a great budget option for a dragon deck. Thundermaw Hellkite, 3 red for a creature dragon. It's a 5/5 with flying and haste. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. Tap those creatures. There you go, man. This clears the way for your flyers, and it's $3 right now, you Mr. Stinky Pants. Alright, up next you have Wrathful Red Dragon, 3 red for a creature dragon. It's a 5/5 with flying. Whenever a dragon you control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target that isn't a dragon. This guy can really throw around the dragon fire, buddy. Hell hath no fury as that of a dang dragon. Hellkite Tyrant, 4 red for a creature dragon. It's a 6/5. This guy's about $10, so I'm not gonna lie, this is not a budget card. Flying Trample. Whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 more artifacts, you win the game. Well, only 3 printings, and it's at $10. Now, this will never win the game with its second ability unless you're really building the artifacts or you have some treasure synergies or something. But it's very satisfying to steal just 2 or 3 mana rocks, and that's the floor on this thing. This thing's fantastic. Alright, I also wanted to mention my favorite dragon, which is Utvara Hellkite. 6 red for a creature dragon. It's a 6/6 with flying. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. I just wanted to mention this guy because it's a win condition all by itself, and it's well worth the $15 in a deck where you can tutor it out reliably. This guy's so nasty. I got it in the Dragon Precon from 2017, and it's one of my most frequent tutor targets for Scion of the Dragon. Whatever, man, I like this guy. Alright, we talked about some ramp, we talked about some draw, we talked about some utility dragons, we talked about some win conditions. Well, what are some commanders that we can build around? Dragon Tribal is easy, right? There are tons of commanders out there that care about dragons. Well, not really. I'll talk about 4, but you can get creative with a whole bunch of the other ones. First up, we have the Dragon. 4 white, blue, black, red, and a green for a legendary creature dragon avatar. It's a 10/10. With Eminence. As long as the Dragon is in your command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, has flying. Whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards. Then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. This guy is the big daddy. He's an eminent cost reducer that needs to do nothing to save you 10 to 12 mana over the course of a game. This thing is bonkers. It's huge. It cheats out permanents and it's just an instantly threatening board state. Unfortunately, the big fella is $75 for the cheapest of its 2 versions. This deck usually wants to cast the big so you're running lots of cost reducers and Fist of Suns type effects. There are a bunch of utility dragons that you're running as well because you have to get that break on mana. This precon also came with Utvara Hellkite and a bunch of other bangers. Fantastic card. You got another big 5-color fatty Tiamat, 2 in Woolburg for a legendary creature dragon god. It's a 7/7 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tiamat that each have different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. I don't understand how the Dragon is a dragon avatar, but this guy's a dragon god, but whatever. I'm not sure why this is so pricey. Getting your 5 best dragons to hand is really good, don't get me wrong, but I think it has more to do with it being like a legendary D&D creature, probably some collection activity around that. This seems like a fun deck to build, about 10 bucks. And you know what's not 10 bucks? Miirym Sentinel Worm. Probably saying that wrong, but whatever. I don't know how the heck else I would pronounce it. 3 green, blue, and a red for a legendary creature, Dragon Spirit. It's a 6/6 with flying and ward 2. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary. This is probably the best budget build around Dragon Commander, and though it's only 3 colors, you can do some really nasty things. I did a budget list around this guy and it's pretty awesome. The exception to the legendary clause makes this really nasty, and the token just hangs out there forever. Can't beat that. And then you have my favorite of all, Scion of the Dragon. Wooburg for a legendary creature, dragon avatar. It's a 4/4 with flying. Has 2. Search your library for a dragon permanent card, put it in your graveyard. If you do, Scion of the Dragon becomes a copy of that card until end of turn, then shuffle. $7 for this weirdly small-bodied, large-headed monster. He's got tiny hands like Donald Trump, dude. This is the most powerful commander for Dragon Tribal, and I'll tell you why. It's got a really nice reanimator flavor to it, and you get to tutor out dragons. My list leans heavily into ramp and reanimator creatures like Nithroi and the Mimeoplasm to get back big nasty monsters. I do have the Dragon in there as well, and I usually fetch that to the yard first. That and Utvara Hellkite kind of just make this thing miserable to play against for my buddies. And guess what? It's pretty resilient due to the fact that if they blow everything up, you can just get it all back from the yard with Patriarch's Bidding and the aforementioned Nithroi. Anyways, I think you should build a dragon deck. It's fun, they slap when they fly and they win. Check out my deck text for Miirym and Scion of the Dragon. And if you don't want to spend 75 bucks on the Dragon, listen, I'm going to tell you a little secret, okay? Just print out a proxy, who cares? It's fine. Remember, share your hoard of golden treasure, which is a metaphor for your kindness and bright thoughts with the universe. Sneaky G from Better Commander, signing off.